power of malevolence, also known as the harbinger of disaster, suddenly appeared around the world. Numerous monsters emerged from the tower, plunging humanity into a state of hopelessness as these creatures brought mankind to the brink of extinction. Just when all seemed lost, the first generation of awakeners appeared. Known as the Founders, they managed to suppress the monsters and eventually conquer and destroy the tower. This victory marked humanity's first triumph against the invasion from another dimension. The Founders were hailed as heroes, and their legacies are commemorated at the Mausoleum of the Founders. A century later, our protagonist, Kannagi Minato, enjoys reading about their legends, which are available in the library. He reads about the great swordsman who, with a mere wooden stick from a tree branch, managed to cut down a 10,000-strong army, and the wise wizard who could chant any magic without incantation. In the current era, these tales are regarded as mere legends or fairy tales. Despite this, Kannagi dreams of marking his name in history, just like the Founders. He knows he possesses the seal of the Chosen Ones. A crest has appeared on his body. With that crest, he pledges to make his name as an awakened, just as the Founders did. Tragically, while his classmates cheer for passing their qualification test, Kannagi remains silent, staring at his phone, which shows that he failed the hunter's qualification test. In tears, he watches everyone celebrate around him. His classmates tease him, saying they will go to the party to celebrate their admission and ask him to clean some trash. As an awakened, he knows that writing down their name guarantees passing the test, but he has failed for 3 years in a row and is mocked as a disgrace. This was his last chance to take the test, and he now believes he can never become a hunter. He picks up the trash in the classroom, sadly reflecting that, despite getting a full score on the written test and training his aura, his crest seems useless, more like a scar than a blessing. With tears in his eyes, holding a trash can, he shouts that he also wants to be like the Founders. Suddenly, a man calls his name, telling him to hurry to the school gate. Startled, he stutteringly replies that he completely forgot, sighing. He thinks that if possible, he wants to be idolized and cheered on like the Founders. At the gate, the students are talking about the man standing before them. Hisaki Kaisei, a rank hunter, smiles apologetically to everyone for causing the commotion. Meanwhile, Hisaki's minions shout at him, saying he's late and making Hisaki wait, to which he stutteringly apologizes. Hisaki walks over to his minions, telling them to stop, and asks if he was right that it wasn't like he was bullying the weak. One of his minions tries to explain, but Hisaki, with a creepy smile, asks if they saw the reporters behind him. His minions quickly apologize. One of the reporters then tells Hisaki that they are looking forward to the documentary, and shows Hisaki his picture, saying they would like to use it as the cover. The reporter explains that it was taken at the defeated a dragon with a single slash of his sword, and asks Hisaki what he thinks about it. Hisaki replies that it's a really good picture, but a bit embarrassing. Kannagi and Hisaki enrolled in the academy together 3 years ago. Hisaki was a genius who scored at the top of the class in every subject. During their time together, Hisaki has been bullying Kannagi. Kannagi can't believe he needs to spend an entire day with Hisaki during the documentary, making him wonder why Hisaki wants him there. The reporter asks Hisaki who the person behind him is. Hisaki replies that he wants to introduce someone from the same academy generation, but then whisperingly asks one of his minions what his name is again. The minion replies, Kannagi Minato, which Hisaki then tells the reporter. Hisaki adds that although Kannagi's grades aren't great, he always asks Hisaki for favors, leaving him with almost no time for his training. He also claims that he gives Kannagi advice and guidance, leaving Kannagi stunned and confused. Kannagi is even more surprised when Hisaki tells the reporters that Kannagi sometimes asks for financial support. Kannagi knows this is bullshit because, while Hisaki always took his money, Kannagi never asked for anything from him. He had never experienced such a pathetic year in his life before. The reporter, amazed by Hisaki's story, tells Hisaki that he is the embodiment of perfection. Hisaki then grabs Kannagi, shouting to the reporters to look forward to it because he will be an awakened who will write history. The reporter then shouts to Kannagi, saying he must be happy to receive Hisaki's kindness, and asks if he has any words for his benefactor. Kannagi is about to respond that there is no way he would do it, but Hisaki whispers to him that he failed the test and is completely worthless, so they should settle this peacefully. Hisaki squeezes Kanagi's shoulder tightly, making him remember the bullying. Smiling in fear, Kanagi tells the reporter that he is completely grateful for everything Hisaki has done for him, and that there are no words to describe his gratitude. After that, Hisaki walks forward, leaving Kanagi behind, and tells the reporter that since they don't have much time, they should move on to the next topic. Hisaki points to his trophies, leaving Kanagi shaking in fear. Kanagi hears someone behind him questioning if they really need his name in the article. But one of the reporters responds that they don't because no one would be interested anyway. Kanagi realizes that even if someone is evil, as long as they have the power to become a hunter, everyone would be on their side and their name would be remembered. He tries to stop the tears in his eyes while stutteringly saying his name. Suddenly, someone shouts his name, shocking him. He sees Hisaki and his minions walking closer, with Hisaki telling him to come to the mausoleum of the founders after school. Kanagi asks why and wonders what is happening and what will happen after. But Hisaki just smiles and asks if he wants to take a re-examination, confusing Kanagi even more. Hisaki tells him that he will talk to the association. When Kanagi asks why Hisaki is doing this, Hisaki responds that it's a way to increase his popularity. And the last scene of the documentary is set at the mausoleum, so they need to film there and discuss it afterwards. Hisaki then warns him that he must come. Kanagi wonders if this is real but thinks that even though he hates the idea of being used by Hisaki to increase his popularity, it's another chance for him regardless of the situation. He smiles, swearing that this time, he will pass for sure. Later, in the mausoleum of the founders, the reporter captures footage of Hisaki saying, "At the mausoleum of the founders, a single top-class hunter pledges to protect humanity's future," and this moment is truly picture perfect. After that, the reporters tell Hisaki they managed to take a good picture and thank him for his time during his busy day. Hisaki replies that he looks forward to the article. Once the reporters leave, Hisaki moves further into the mausoleum. When he arrives where his minions are waiting, he asks if they have found the entry point. His minions excitedly reply that they have and point to a secret pathway, asking if it is the one they were looking for. Suddenly, someone asks from behind what they are doing. Hisaki nonchalantly asks if he hasn't figured it out yet, and tells him it's a treasure hunt. Kanagi angrily shouts at Hisaki, calling him a grave bandit and asking if he even understands who is resting in that place. Hisaki responds that of course he knows, but then he kicks one of the founder statues and asks if he's right that it's only the rotten bodies of the past. He explains that they couldn't let the chance slip away to become millionaires and dismisses the importance of the founders' remains, saying they are just dead bodies and don't matter. Kanagi acknowledges that the founders were amazing, which is why he wants to be like them. Unawakened, whose name is marked in history, enraged, Kanagi rushes to attack Hisaki, calling him a bastard. However, Hisaki sidesteps swiftly and punches him hard in the stomach, making him cough up blood. He collapses to the ground, clutching his stomach in pain, while Hisaki berates him for daring to attack. Hisaki continues to assault him, making him think he might die, but then one of Hisaki's minions calls out, saying they found something and shows a lot of valuable items, which shocks him. Hisaki grabs a crystal and excitedly asks if the aura is emitting from the item itself. Hisaki shouts that it's wonderful and that with it, he could live without needing to work for the rest of his life. Kanagi tries to stop them, shouting not to touch it, but his voice fails to come out. Hisaki then grabs him by the shirt and says he'll explain it as simply as possible so a failure like him can understand. Hisaki reveals that he had been looking for a weakling like him all along, having tricked him with the promise of a re-examination. He knew about Kanagi visiting the library all the time, and found it amusing. Finally, Hisaki declares he has found a useful pawn. Hisaki then drags him outside, smilingly shouting that he dreamed of becoming a hunter. So he finally decided to steal the treasures of the mausoleum and go missing, which is a tragic story. Kanagi stutteringly tells Hisaki to stop the bullshit, but Hisaki continues, saying it will be tomorrow's top news. Hisaki then lifts him over a cliff, telling him that after robbing the mausoleum of the founders and escaping from the police, the culprit will be a third-year hunter from the training academy. Hisaki then lets go of him and mockingly asks for his name again. Kanagi looks at Hisaki in anger and fear, but Hisaki tells him that knowing his name doesn't matter now and says goodbye. Kanagi falls into the river, wondering if this is how he will die after all the training and tests. He thinks everything was meaningless because he is fading away without being remembered by anyone. Suddenly, lights appear around him and many figures surround him. He hears them saying that he will be their vessel and grant their wish. The figures introduce themselves as the heroic spirits sealed in that place, the very souls of the founders. Shocked, he wonders what this means, hearing voices and seeing lights from the founders. One of the founders tells him that the crest on his hand is the crest of nothingness. It doesn't possess any power by itself, but it can manifest any power he could have never imagined. The voice tells him to choose one of them and form a contract, because they are the pinnacle of every art. Magic, endurance, swordsmanship, spearmanship, summoning magic, alchemy, and more. Whoever he chooses, he will gain power from that benefactor. The voice asks him whose power he seeks. He initially thinks of wanting power like Hazakis, but changes his mind. He responds that he wants a power incomparable in the world, a power to overwhelm everything and wipe away all the humiliations he endured. Another voice then tells him to decide whom he chooses. Kannagi replies that he wants everything and all of their powers, they should give him everything. The founders consider him greedy, thinking it's impossible, as no matter how strong the vessel is, taking everything would be a mess. But Kannagi absorbs them all, shouting at them to shut up, and instead of yapping their mouths, to enter him. Kannagi pushes himself to absorb all the heroic spirits, causing mixed reactions among the founders. Some panic, some are amazed, others don't care, and some wonder who he is. Eventually, he absorbs all of them. From atop the hill, Hisaki looks back when he sees a light emerging from the river. Suddenly, the river rises as if something exploded beneath it, making everyone turn and wonder what is happening. Kannagi then flies out of the river, landing on the hill in front of Hisaki and his minions with different hair and eye colors. One of Hisaki's minions sneers, saying Kannagi crawl back like a tenacious roach. Kannagi breaks a small branch off a long branch and swings it at Hisaki's minions, who are shocked and ask what the hell he is doing. Hisaki's minions then teasingly laugh at him, asking if he really intends to fight them with a stick. Kannagi continues to swing his stick, prompting Hisaki to sigh and tell his minions to end it, ensuring Kannagi doesn't crawl back again. Hisaki orders his minions to cut Kannagi's head off. One of the minions grabs his sword and arrogantly replies to Hisaki that he understands. He taunts Kannagi, saying that based on the recent exam, his sword aura is a rank and he has mastered the way of the swordsman. He tells Kannagi to be grateful to be cut down by him. Kannagi simply responds, mastering the way of the swordsman. The man then jumps towards Kannagi, slashing at him with his sword. Smiling, the man stops behind him, but then blood begins to pour from all over his body and head as if he had been slashed. The man screams in pain, while Hisaki and the other minion look on in shock, unable to believe what they are seeing. Kannagi then tells the man that he has mastered the way of the swordsman and asks him what kind of swordsmanship he uses. The other minion casts a spell, calling upon the green cradle and the gaze of destruction. Kannagi points his finger at the minion and tells him that he is slow. He then attacks the minion with a spell, Thunderbolt Hadet, without any incantation. The minion cannot believe it, and a powerful thunderbolt strikes him, electrocuting him to death. Hisaki cannot believe that Kannagi cut down his minion with nothing but a mere branch and cast magic without any incantation. Hisaki recalls the legend of a great swordsman who, long ago, cut down a 10,000-strong army with only a single wooden stick, and a wizard who could chant any magic without incantation. In the current era, these stories are considered mere legends or fairy tales. Now, the souls of the awakeners that slumbered in the mausoleum of the founders dwell within Kannagi Minato. There are 106 souls inside his body. Kannagi remembers Hisaki telling everyone that he would mark his name in history as an awakened. He walks closer to Hisaki, declaring that his name shall not be forgotten, and that he shall be remembered eternally, including the new myth about him. Kannagi stops approaching Hisaki, unable to believe that he managed to absorb the souls of the founders with his crest of nothingness. He hears the founders inside him, content and excited, marveling at the spaciousness of their new home. They ask how many centuries it has been since they were freed from boredom. Kannagi smiles, feeling the founders' happiness. He had memorized their legends for a long time, and now their souls are inside him. However, the founders decide it will be a race to see who gets to control his body. The great swordsman, Inoki Ryukairu, calls to Kannagi, surprising him. Hinoki remarks that it is expected to be remembered after such a long time. He asks Kanagi what he plans to do. Kanagi asks if he means dealing with Hisaki, but Hinoki dismisses Hisaki as trash and points behind him, asking what Kanagi will do about that. Shocked, Kanagi walks closer to Hisaki, who stutteringly tells him to stay away and not to look down on an rank hunter like him. Kanagi punches Hisaki in the face, sending him spinning in midair from the force. Kanagi then faces the bag that is releasing a dark aura and tells Hisaki to get out of the way. He focuses on the bag, and suddenly, a strong power emanates from it, surprising him. Hinoki, however, smiles calmly. Meanwhile, in the city, a Cerberus is attacking everything in its path. A man shouts to Kisaragi to handle it. Kisaragi faces the beast, and when it lunges at him, he jumps above it and attacks with a waterfall impact from above. The people cheer in amazement, shouting that Kisaragi instantly killed an A-rank monster. The S-rank hunter Kisaragi thanks them for their compliments and asks where Hisaki is. The man tells Kisaragi that because of an interview, it must be nice to be called a young hope. But Kisaragi tells the man not to say it like that. If Hisaki becomes more popular, their guild's reputation will also rise. They decide to get a drink after filing a report when they hear a strong growl and feel intense pressure. Everyone panics, wondering if it is a demon. Kisaragi looked back when he heard his team in pain and saw normal people collapsing and hunters struggling because of the pressure. He noticed that a rank and B-rank hunters couldn't stand against it, indicating it was an S-rank monster, so Kisaragi immediately made a call. Meanwhile, on the street, people passed out due to the pressure, which was coming from the mausoleum of the founders. Hisaki, shakingly sitting up, was surprised to see a huge monster emerging from the bag in front of them. He asked if it was a demon and what the hell it was. Kanagi replied that it was because Hisaki had opened the mausoleum, releasing one of the boss monsters from the tower that was sealed there. The seal was undone when Hisaki took the items away. Hinoki confirmed this, explaining that some demons from the tower survive by hiding and becoming dormant. He identified the demon as the embodiment of emptiness, a stacked-eyed tiger estimated to be above S-rank in danger level. Hisaki tried to stand up, shaking, while Hinoki explained that the stacked-eyed tiger is a living disaster that kills numerous humans within a few kilometers with its poisonous aura. This demon was quite common during their era, but now was overwhelmingly powerful for the youngsters of this era. Panicking, Hisaki ran away, shouting that he needed to escape or else he would be killed. Kanagi warned Hisaki that it was better not to move, as the tiger targets moving objects. The stacked-eyed tiger saw Hisaki running and immediately lashed out with one of its tentacles. Hisaki, covering himself with his sword and shouting at the demon to stay away, was helpless as the tentacle pierced his chest. Despite having slain a dragon with his sword before, Hisaki couldn't stop the demon from spreading its tentacles inside his body. The stacked-eyed tiger began to absorb Hisaki, making him scream in pain. Kanagi simply told him that he had warned him. Hinoki then wrapped his hand around Kanagi and asked if he would give his body to him completely. Hinoki then asked if Kanagi wanted to see the founder Hinoki's one-handed sword style, thinking he would take the vessel while the others were distracted. Kanagi responded that he didn't mind lending his body, to which Hinoki excitedly agreed. However, another founder grabbed Hinoki and accused him of trying to run away with such a strong vessel, claiming it for themselves. Realizing he had been noticed, Hinoki tried to calm everyone down. They all stopped when Kanagi told him he had one condition. He would only lend his body to everyone. This confused them. Kanagi tells the founders that he will definitely surpass all of them and, in time, reach the same heights they did. He also wants to see how strong he will become. He then challenges them to show him what they've got. Hinoki wonders what Kanagi's deal is, thinking he's insane while drawing his sword. Hinoki then takes control of Kanagi's body and shouts to the other founders that they should join in. He slashes the demon with the stick, aided by Hinoki, severing one of the demon's arms. The demon launches its other arm to attack, but Kanagi, while looking at the chopped stick in his hand, manages to dodge as another founder possesses his body. He then uses his hand to cut the demon's arm, shocking the demon. Kanagi grabs a huge stick from the ground, and the spearman founder possesses his body, using the stick as a spear to attack the demon. Another founder then possesses him, allowing him to easily dodge the demon's attacks. The old founder takes over. enabling Kannagi to grab the demon's tentacle and slam it into the ground with immense force. The demon is flung into the air, and Kannagi grabs the back. The archer founder possesses him, and he aims and successfully hits the demon in the head. It screams in pain as its blood spreads around. Kannagi wipes his face and continuously attacks the demon in different ways as the founders possess his body one by one. Hinoki then takes control again and grabs Hisaki's broken sword from the ground. The demon attempts a surprise underground attack, but Kannagi's eyes turn yellow as the great wizard possesses him and electrocutes the demon. He then jumps, and when he is above it, Hinoki uses his one-handed sword style, Jekiratachi wave-cutting blade, to slash the demon in half, killing it. Kannagi smiles victoriously. Meanwhile, a raven perched on a tree watches everything that just happened. In the city, a man floating in midair answers his phone, incredulous that the demon was already defeated when he was just about to head over there. He asks if there are any strong hunters nearby. The person on the other line responds that, based on footage from the raven, it was a student of the academy. The man, surprised, acknowledges this. The world's strongest awakened, Ikuhara Midori then tells the person on the other line that he wants to meet that student. The next morning, Ikuhara is sitting on a pile of dead monsters, calling the director and informing him about the S-rank demon. The director asks if Ikuhara defeated it, but he replies that it was not him. Based on footage from his raven, it was Kannagi Minato who defeated it. Ikuhara mentions that Kannagi failed the hunter's examination 3 years in a row, which makes it hard for him to believe. He then asked the director if he could do him a favor. Meanwhile, at the academy, students are asking each other if they were okay yesterday because the aura was so awful that they couldn't move. One student jokes with his friend, asking what he would do if he told him that it was actually him who killed the monster. The friend dismisses it as impossible, noting that it has been 10 years since the last emergence of an hunter. However, the friend reminds him of a rumor that the one who defeated the monster was actually a student from the academy. Kannagi, walking with a stick to support, is shaking, while the other student dismisses the idea, thinking no hunter could defeat that demon, and if there was such a person, he wouldn't be in their academy. Kannagi is amazed that the only topic of conversation today is yesterday's incident. Suddenly, a man bumps him aside, telling him he's in the way. Kannagi falls to the floor, and the man thinks there is no way such a loser could be the Shrank Slayer while looking at him. Kannagi knows he defeated the demon yesterday, but it was because he lent his body to the founders. Now, his body is painfully torn apart as they recoil. Someone then laughingly asks him if he is completely okay with it, and when he looks up, he sees it as Hinoki. Hinoki tells him to get a grip and asks if he wanted to surpass them. Kannagi remembers saying it last night and confidently responds that he did. He pushes himself to stand up while Hinoki laughingly tells him to show his guts. Hinoki looks at the students and notices that the level of the awakeners in this era is too low, more or less the same as normal humans, which he considers trash. Hinoki also thinks that if the tower were to emerge right at that moment, the world would surely end. But then Hinoki is surprised to sense someone with a strong aura. Kannagi asks Hinoki what is wrong, but Hinoki replies it's nothing, though he thinks that just now he felt a tremendous aura. Suddenly, a professor shouted for Kannagi to hurry up and come over, apologizing. Kannagi asked if it was his letter of resignation, knowing that he had only 3 chances to take the test and that the hunter's qualification test can only be taken from the training academy, meaning he would need to start over from the general admission slot. However, the professor told him to go to the field immediately because it was his re-examination, which surprised him. A moment later, the students watched from the window, wondering if there had ever been a hunter re-examination test before, but no one knew. Meanwhile, in the field, Kannagi's mission was a 100-meter sprint, with an average time of 3.6 seconds and a best record of 2.7 seconds. He knew he was not in perfect condition, but needed to give his best. The man who had pushed him earlier told the students that Kannagi was famous for being a failure even in the teacher's office, and that giving him a chance after 3 years of failure was just sympathy. However, when Kannagi began to run, everyone was shocked when he completed it in 1.2 seconds. In the next test, his mission was to complete a 3,000-meter sprint with an average time of 4 minutes and 20 seconds and a best record of 3 minutes and 17 seconds. To everyone's astonishment, he finished it in 1 minute and 17 seconds. The next test was push-ups in 2 minutes, with an average of 215 push-ups and a best record of 418 push-ups, but he managed 840 push-ups. The next test was the bench press, with an average weight of kilograms and a best record of 620 kilograms, yet he lifted of 1,280 kilograms. The students were shocked and asked what he was because he beat all the best records by more than double, and the ladies thought he was cool. Kannagi wondered if the founders were still lending him with their powers, but Hinoki knew they wouldn't help with something like this and that they hadn't done anything. Meanwhile, in the headmaster's office, the headmaster gave Ikuhara all the current records of Kannagi Minato. Ikuhara thanked the headmaster and was amazed at Kannagi's records. The headmaster told Ikuhara that when he heard about the request for RE examination, he thought something was wrong, even though Kannagi's physical abilities are amazing. The real issue is his magic capacity, because in all the tests over the past 3 years, Kannagi's capacity was immeasurable, and he essentially had no mana. So the headmaster thought it would be a waste of their attention. Ikuhara's secretary commented that this was what they expected of Kannagi, but Ikuhara just laughed and said they would see about it. Meanwhile, in the field, he was taking the magic measurement tests. The professor asked if he understood how the measurement worked and explained that he had to use his magic to spin the giant fans within 30 seconds. The number of rotations would determine his score. He replied that he did. The average score for the test was 1,513 spins, and the best record was 4,022 spins. He stretched out his hand, remembering that in the past 3 years he couldn't even move the fans no matter how hard he tried. He couldn't control mana because he couldn't feel it at all, but now he could feel it circulating around him. From his right foot, it flowed upward into his body, circling inside him and returning to his right foot. He also knew that he could accelerate the cycle with his breathing and release it through the palm of his right hand. The professor then shouted for him to start. He released his mana into the fan, and the count machine began to register the spins. Suddenly, the fan spun rapidly, speeding up the count and shocking the professors. The fan turned so fast that the counting machine couldn't keep up, and the air from the fan made it difficult for the professors to see the score. Then, the machine holding the fan exploded, and the fan flew away. It soared towards a building, causing the students to panic, and crashed directly into the headmaster's office, causing a loud explosion. The headmaster narrowly avoided being hit and collapsed from the shock. Ikuhara's secretary was in disbelief, but Ikuhara laughed, saying it seemed Kannagi and he were alike. Ikuhara then looked at him, declaring that Kannagi was the second person in history after him to achieve an immeasurable score. The professor, who had witnessed everything, shouted that he had passed the hunter examination. The students cheered for him, exclaiming that he had achieved the best record in every test. He looked at his hand in disbelief, tears streaming down his face, and thanked them profusely, amazed that the power had been inside him all this time. Hinoki smiled, expecting this outcome, and Kannagi knew that by lending his body to the founders, the potential within him had been awakened. Laughingly, Hinoki told him that he was not an ordinary person with the crest of nothingness, and that he had been waiting for him for more than a century. Hinoki then asked if they would agree, and Kannagi might fulfill their wish, believing that he might be the one they had been waiting for. Just then, a strong aura landed in front of him, shocking him. He stutteringly asked what it was and if it was an explosion, but Hinoki recognized it as the tremendous aura he had felt that morning. Ikuhara greeted him, and he was stunned to see the legendary figure standing before him. Ikuhara congratulated him on his hunter examination results. He stutteringly thanked Ikuhara, unable to believe that the legend knew his name and wondering what was happening. Ikuhara then said they should start an additional test for him, suggesting they call it try to hit the strongest hunter at least once, which shocked him to his core. Ikahara Midori, a 23-year-old man, became a full-fledged hunter at the age of 9. No one could deny that he was the world's strongest hunter. Ikahara turned thousands of demons into ashes in an instant, and weak demons and even hunters could be easily killed with a mere fraction of his power. He single-handedly conquered the Pandemonium outbreak 10 years ago and the Kyushu outbreak 5 years ago, earning him the title of a living singularity. This is why it was such a shock when Ikahara told him to try to hit him at least once. Hinoki called out excitedly, urging him to lend his body to him immediately. Ikahara then explained the simple rule: If he could land a hit within the next minute, he would win. Even if he lost, there would be no punishment. Additionally, Ikehara would only attack once every 10 seconds. Ikehara assured him there was no need to worry, as he would go easy on him and he could use any skill he wanted, while Ikehara wouldn't use any skills at all. Ikehara then summoned a swarm of different weapons, telling him he could choose any weapon he liked. This surprised him, and he wondered what was happening. He was confused about the additional test, and whether he could really fight the famous Ikehara Midori head-on in that 1-minute time frame. He asked Ikehara if he could really use any weapon, and Ikehara grabbed a katana, replying that he could use them absolutely because his body was harder than a katana. Ikehara then easily cut the katana in half, stating that his body was sharper than any sword. Snapped out of his thoughts when Hinoki shouted at him to hurry up and switch with him. Hinoki then angrily asked, how dare Ikehara say such words, shouting that he couldn't forgive Ikehara now. This made him realize that Hinoki was getting excited and that Ikehara's power was at the same level as the founders, meaning he didn't stand a chance. Behind him, Hinoki was fuming with anger, staring at Ikehara. He sighed and faced Ikehara with a brave face. The students watched excitedly, shouting that something interesting was starting, a real battle with Ikehara. Hinoki asked what he was doing and was about to tell him to lend him his body quickly. But then Ikehara started the timer, smiling as he told him they should begin. He grabbed a sword and rushed at Ikehara to attack. Hinoki asked if he was planning on fighting alone, insisting it wasn't fair, but he continued to attack anyway, knowing it was meaningless. He knew for sure that to become a legend, he couldn't just borrow the power of the founders. He had to do it with his own power. He then tried to slash Ikehara, but Ikehara easily dodged without moving much. Kanagi continuously attacked Ikehara while Ikehara was on the phone, asking him which social media he was using and telling him that he was sure the incident would be recorded and go viral. The students couldn't believe that Ikehara was on his phone while effortlessly dodging all of Kanagi's attacks, shouting that Ikehara was incredibly strong. Despite his efforts, Kanagi couldn't land a single hit on Ikehara, who wasn't even taking the fight seriously. The students were amazed by Kanagi's relentless attacks, yet one of them thought something was off about his movements. They wondered how long the fight would continue while watching intently. Kanagi lifted his sword, feinting a vertical slash before switching to a horizontal one aimed at Ikehara's feet and throat, successfully executing the move. Kanagi was amazed at how his body could move exactly as he wanted, realizing he didn't tire from the movements. He wondered if it was the effect of lending his body to the founders, knowing his body was changing. His thoughts were interrupted when Ikehara placed a finger on Kanagi's head, preparing to flick him, and mentioned that 10 seconds had already passed. Fortunately, Kanagi dodged in time, but Ikehara's release power destroyed the field, making Kanagi realize that his head would have been gone if the attack had hit. Ikehara looked at his hand in confusion, thinking it was strange since he didn't sense any evil from Kanagi and couldn't believe he had mistakenly adjusted his output. Meanwhile, Kanagi panicked, knowing he would be killed at this rate, and tried to recall the feeling of his stronger self. He then released a strong aura, surprising Ikehara. Kanogi attacked Ikehara again, and the students were amazed by his increasing speed, though he still couldn't land a hit. The students shouted that the camera couldn't keep up with their movements. Ikehara noticed Kanogi's increased speed and sensed a different atmosphere, wondering if there was a condition to activate this power, or if Kanogi wanted to keep it a secret. Realizing another 10 seconds had passed, Ikehara decided to attack Kanogi lightly this time. He bent down and positioned his finger to flick again. But this time he hit Kanagi in the chest, sending him slamming into the wall hard. Kanagi coughed up blood but thought it was awesome and marvelous to be fighting against the world's strongest awakened. He knew that if his body were the same as yesterday's and had taken that hit, he would already be dead. This realization made him smile because he knew it meant he was getting stronger. However, he also knew that with his current skill, he wouldn't be able to pass Ikehara's test. He decided to brute force his way through the remaining time he had and ran towards Ikehara again. Suddenly, Ikehara appeared next to him with incredible speed, making Kanagi stop and look to his side. Ikehara apologized and told him he had seen enough. He added that the 30 seconds were up, then hit Kanagi on the nape, causing him to slowly fall asleep. As Kanagi fell to the ground, Ikehara thought he could see that Kanagi was a genius. but not on the same level as his comrades. In the end, Kanagi couldn't fully demonstrate the power Ikehara had glimpsed. Ikehara called his secretary, telling her they should head back and expressing his disappointment. Suddenly, Kanagi grabbed his sword, and Ikehara felt a strong aura behind him. Kanagi, now under Hinoki's control, asked Ikehara what he had said. Ikehara looked back and saw Kanagi releasing a powerful aura. Hinoki, controlling Kanagi's body, told Ikehara that the stubborn brat was already in bed, so he could finally use the body. Hinoki then walked closer to Ikehara and suggested they should play a little bit longer. Kanagi's spirit, out of his own body, panicked when he saw that Hinoki was now controlling it. However, Ikehara smiled, recognizing the presence he had felt earlier. This made him question if it was a different person or just a skill, but regardless, he knew that Kanagi was now a monster. Kanagi then attacked and shouted at him not to space out. He noticed that Kanagi's movements had changed. His speed and power were on a different level. Suddenly, Ikehara felt a sword near his face and ducked just in time to dodge it. Kanagi swung his sword again, and Ikehara leaped away to create distance. Still in shock, Kanagi positioned his sword and swung it once more, but Ikehara bent down in time, causing Kanagi to slash the building behind him instead. The students inside the building rushed away in panic, realizing the danger. Ikehara noticed that Kanagi's slashes were becoming unpredictable, yet he could anticipate his opponent's movements. It felt like ancient swordsmanship to him, like a torrent of water. Ikehara stretched out his palm, laughingly telling Kanagi that such skill was needed to defeat an S rank like him. He then raised his palm to make Kanagi sleep again, noting that only 40 seconds had passed. But Kanagi moved closer with incredible speed and swung his sword, shouting that there was no way Ikehara could hit him. Ikehara jumped away to dodge the attack and laughingly told Kanagi that his skills were amazing. The students couldn't believe what they were witnessing, or that Ikehara Midori was on the defensive. Kanagi shouted that Ikehara was boring and that there was no need to hold back against him. He also warned Ikehara that he would beat him up if he looked down on him. Kanagi then leaped to attack, but Ikehara laughed and replied, "Fine." He kicked a stone, and it headed into the weapons behind him. All the weapons float in the air. Ikehara jumped, surprising Kanagi, and grabbed one of the weapons floating above them. He excitedly tells Ikehara that he's finally going all out. They then engage in an intense mid-air battle, foot on foot, stunning the students who watch in amazement. They grab every weapon in sight and shatter them into pieces with their sheer strength. Meanwhile, inside Kanagi's body, the founders observe Hinoki going full throttle. They are impressed that Ikehara manages to hold his own against Hinoki. One founder, feeling envious, remarks on the fun and pitiful nature of not being the one to fight while he watches in silence. One of the founders asks if this means Kanaga's body isn't yet a perfect vessel. An old man suggests joining the fray, but another founder tells him to stop, calling him tactless. The great wizard silently stares, surprised to realize that he is studying Hinoki's movements, trying to learn from them. He notices Hinoki pouncing from below, shifting his center of gravity, but the sword Hinoki wields shatters into pieces once again. Hinoki, frustrated by the low-quality sword, feels a surge of anger. Ikehara, on the other hand, finds the battle exhilarating, his heart racing with excitement. However, Ikehara notices that there are no swords left, and wonders if Kanagi will resort to using firearms. Ikehara then taunts Hinoki, shouting that there are only 10 seconds left, and teasingly asks what he'll do now. Hinoki glances back at the building behind him and leaps toward it. He heads for the man who had pushed Kanagi earlier and snatches the man's sword. Just then, Ikehara jumps closer, launching his fist at Hinoki, causing a loud explosion upon impact with the building. Fortunately, Hinoki dodges the attack and reappears in front of Ikehara. They resume their mid-air battle, foot on foot, enjoying the fight as if it were a game. Ikehara shouts that it's fun and suggests they continue a bit longer, while the students notice their building is on the verge of collapsing. The combatants reach the top of the building where Ikehara's secretary watches intently. Ikehara then places his hand on a huge fan and grabs it, causing it to crack. He sees Ikehara take out the fan from the headmaster's room and aims it at him. Ikehara then threw the fan at him, but he was surprised when Hinoki used his one-handed sword style to slash the fan before it hit him. The fan shattered into tiny pieces and Ikehara shouted excitedly, telling him he was truly amazing. However, Hinoki simply launched his sword, telling Ikahara to eat it. Yet, to his shock, the sword shattered into pieces. Ikahara raised his hand, aiming at him. Ikahara then told him that 60 seconds had passed and launched his palm at Hinoki, causing him to fall. Hinoki cursed, but then Kanagi jumped onto Hinoki's back, shouting "not yet," and pushed Hinoki back towards the other founders. He then gently tapped Ikahara's palm aside, dodging Ikahara's attack, which shocked both Hinoki and Ikahara. However, one of his hands was dislocated from the impact. Still, he told Ikahara that he only needed a single hit and punched Ikahara in the face with his other hand. The battle between the singularities felt like it lasted an eternity from the inside. A fierce struggle for a seemingly small answer, akin to a chess game where both players are equally skilled. Hinoki knew that, despite the intensity, it had only lasted a brief moment. He smiled proudly, realizing that Kanagi had opened a new path to victory. However, Kanagi was in shock when he saw that Ikahara had stopped his fist in time. He cursed, knowing he hadn't hit him, but then Ikahara smiled and pulled his fist to his face, surprising him. Ikahara then happily told him that he had passed before they both slammed into the ground. A moment later, the students watching were confused, asking what had happened. Ikahara, holding Kanagi, collapsed and called his secretary Rin, telling her they should go back. Rin appeared next to Ikahara, asking how it went. Ikahara replied that Kanagi had passed and that he was interesting. But since he had accidentally broken Kanagi's arm, she should help fix it. She replied that she understood. The students, hearing Ikahara, couldn't believe that Kanagi had passed. Suddenly they cheered for him, realizing that passing meant he had landed a hit on Ikahara, which woke Kanagi up. Rin, who was healing him, told him to let her heal his arm and not to move, which he agreed to, thanking her. Rin then congratulated him on passing the test. Kanagi thanked her for the compliment, but then sat up in shock, asking if he had really passed and if he had truly landed a hit on Ikahara. Suddenly, Ikahara appeared next to him, saying it was cruel for him to forget so soon, shocking Kanagi. Ikahara then told him that they were even now, and a pass is a pass. He mentioned that he went serious midway through his consecutive attacks, but Hinoki didn't respond, knowing it was true. Ikahara also praised him, saying he dodged his strongest attack and his movements were amazing, urging him to be proud. Kanagi excitedly replied, "Yes." Kanagi then called out to Ikahara, asking what comes next after passing, making Rin look at Ikahara in confusion. Ikahara, also unsure, stared back at Kanagi, searching for an answer as the students watched intently. Later that night at his house, his mother was frying food when she asked him how many guests were coming. While cleaning the house, he replied that he didn't know, probably only one person. His mother remarked that today was a good day, on top of passing the hunter's examination. He was being scouted by Ikahara Midori. She then told him that she always believed he was a kid who could achieve anything with effort. He warmly replied, yes. However, his mother wordly commented that for such a celebrity to visit their house, it might be mistaken for a doghouse. He shouted back that Ikahara was not that kind of person. After cleaning and helping his mother, he lay on his bed to rest and stared at Ikahara's card, wondering why Ikahara hadn't given it any thought. His mind wandered back to the field, recalling Rin taking Ikahara down and Ikahara screaming in pain. Ikahara had asked him if he didn't say he would become one of his comrades if he won. He replied, thinking he hadn't heard such words, making Rin more furious as she tightly grabbed Ikahara's feet, causing him to scream in pain. Ikahara then told him that there were too many eyes around and asked if he could visit his home tonight to discuss things in detail. He promised to explain the choices available and reveal who their real enemies were. He pondered who their real enemies could be, knowing that the tower was already destroyed by the founders and that the current hunter's task was to hunt the monsters that had escaped from the dimensional cracks. He wondered if there was any other reason, but then he fell asleep. Suddenly, Hinoki shoutingly woke him up, startling him. He saw that Hinoki and the founders were there. He asked why everyone was there and what was wrong, but Hinoki simply replied that they had been discussing something and had just finished. Confused, he covered his body and asked Hinoki if they had decided who would get his body. Before Hinoki could reply, the doorbell rang. Apologizing to Hinoki, he explained that he thought Ikehara had arrived and suggested they talk about it later. He then walked to the kitchen near the door, noticing it was dark and wondering what was happening. To his shock, he saw his mother lying on the floor, collapsed. Panicking, he called out to her in worry. He rushed to his mother but stopped when he saw someone sitting in the kitchen. He saw the person grab the food his mother had made and eat it happily. Watching the man eat and compliment the food, he noticed the kitchen was a mess. The man teased him, saying he had to discipline his old lady, and, if he wanted to impress customers, they should at least use expensive meat. He asked the man who he was and what he had done to his mother, but the man shouted at him to watch his mouth and introduced himself as Heitani Goru, the S-rank hunter who had come to pick him up and was one of Ikehara Midori's comrades. Heitani then told him to hurry up and take his luggage because they were moving to their base. Then raged, he launched his fist at Heitani, who dodged it and laughingly appeared behind him, asking if he was challenging him. He remained silent, remembering his mother telling him that even though his father had passed away, she would raise him alone to be a proud person. He recalled his mother's shoes being a mess, but she had told him it was fine and she could still wear them. She reminded him not to forget to buy himself new sneakers and congratulated him for doing a great job, promising to make his favorite tonkatsu for dinner. He then looked seriously at Heitani and demanded to know what he had done to his mother. Inoki noticed that Kanagi's opponent was an S-rank hunter from that era and told everyone it was about time to act. Although he was annoyed just by looking at Ikehara's ripoff, they all knew from that fight how the founders should treat Kanagi from now on. Heitani teasingly tells him that his angry face is pretty cute. He then lifts his hand to slap him, but he just calmly waits, grabbing Heitani's hand before it hits him. He easily drags Heitani around, surprising the old founder, who remembers this move from their fights against monsters. In just minutes, the peaceful Kanagi house is destroyed as Heitani is thrown out the window, smashing through the backyard wall. Yet, Heitani manages to land on his feet before hitting the ground as he walks closer. Heitani wonders if what he just witnessed was Aikido. He recalls watching his fight with Ikehara that afternoon on video, and not only noticing his tremendous aura and swordsmanship, but also that power. He then tells Heitani that he expected such resilience from an orang hunter, remarking that he is sturdier than Hisaki. Laring, he orders Heitani to hurry up and answer his question already. He demands to know what Heitani did to his mother, who is inside struggling in pain as poison spreads through her body. Heitani laughs and teasingly tells him that based on his words, it seems he doesn't know. Heitani then shouts that it was poison and that his mother was getting in his way, so he put her to sleep. He adds that if she's lucky, she might only suffer minor side effects. Calmly, he tells Heitani that he doesn't understand, making Heitani look at him confused. He then asks why they would hurt the family of someone who might become their comrade. But Heitani just laughs and asks if he said comrade. Heitani suddenly appears behind him, ready to attack. He avoids Heitani's slash just in time, but Heitani continuously attacks, declaring that he won't become their comrade, but only a doll that obeys their orders. Heitani taunts him, saying that once they hold his precious ones hostage, he will obey because he is naive. He is then surprised when Heitani steps on his foot and slash him, mockingly asking if he was right. Creating distance away from Heitani, he feels his cheek burning and wonders what it is, noticing the poison spreading on his face. Heitani then shows his fingers, which are coated with sharp things and poison, and teasingly tells him that it's already in. He reveals that he has a skill allowing him to produce dozens of poisons from his body, called Phantom Bug's Poison, Deadly Vision. Heitani then complained that it was a bothersome mission, because if he felt like it, he could release deadly toxic gas within a 5 kilometers radius, but he couldn't do it in the middle of a city. He explained that the poison would kill him within a minute, so if he agreed to join their organization, Heitani would make the antidote for him. Otherwise, he would lose his life. He thought about the toxic gas that is lethal within 5 kilometers and confirmed that Heitani is in S rank, realizing that for a normal person, it would be a disaster. He then looked at his hand and called upon the god of medicine, Valentine, asking if he was right that she was inside him. This made the founders look at Valentine, who was confused and surprised. He apologized to her for calling her so suddenly and asked if she could teach him how to detoxify the poison later. To which she stutteringly replied, yes. Heitani threw poison at him while asking what he was mumbling about and if the fear of death had overtaken his mind. He dodged the poison, explaining that the Aikido earlier was from the god of hands, Kudu Hayama, which surprised Kudu inside him and confirmed that he was copying his Aikido from just that one moment. He then called upon the 0th army slasher, Hinoki Rikairu, the blue spear of destruction, Shimer Kelskis, and the heavenly bow, Margit. He told them that he had been studying and remembered all of them from the records. He then informed Heitani that the founders he always adored were now residing inside him, which confused Heitani. But he simply told Heitani that he had no reason to be afraid of him, making Heitani pissed, and shoutingly asked how about he teaches him the world of pain. Heitani ran towards him, laughingly telling him that the next poison would make him beg for his life to end. He jumped away to dodge Heitani's attack, and when Heitani hit a nearby tree, it dissolved and died. Heitani then launched another attack, shouting that if he begged and kneeled, he would at least relieve some pain with antidotes. He warned that once he was corrupted by pain, he would never be able to return to normal after going crazy because of it. But he just silently waited for Heitani's hand to get closer, and when he saw that Heitani was close enough, he slid his body to the side and put his hand on Heitani's chest, activating the Fist of Saint Wantak attack. Heitani coughed up blood when he hit him, which surprised Wantak inside him. Heitani then slammed into a streetlight from the force, and he kicked his face with the feet of light, Ilison, throwing him a distance away, which surprised Ilison inside him. Yet Heitani managed to stand on his feet, and he swiftly appeared in front of him. As he launched an attack at Heitani, Heitani retaliated with both of his hands. However, he managed to slip through his attack on Heitani's hands, breaking some of his nails, and used a sharp break, Carol attack, which hit Heitani's stomach, making Carol look at him proudly. He then slashed Heitani with the dragon's claw, Rowan's skill, stunning Rowan in surprise inside him. He then grabbed Heitani, activated the flipper of Laylock, and threw Heitani around in midair. Heitani, floating, wondered what the hell was happening. He knew that once someone is exposed to poison, their judgment should be clouded, and the poison should have already affected his nervous system. Yet he was still moving fine and strong. He then activated the Magus of Truth, Melchia's silences, which surprised her, and then released it on Heitani, causing a loud explosion and leaving all the founders in disbelief. Hinoki asked the founders if he was right that they all saw it, and told them that just after defeating that insect once, Kannagi was copying all of their moves, both physical and magical. Hinoki also mentioned that he didn't care whether Kannagi's power was from the crest of nothingness or not, but for him, Kannagi was interesting, and they all agreed. Hinoki then told everyone that they should nurture Kannagi, because if he was trained by the founders, he would become the strongest awakening, while Kannagi was panically calling for his mother. The scene then shifts to, in the street, men are jumping and running from rooftop to rooftop, with one of them shouting to everyone not to slack off because there are already 15 guilds on the move to get their hands on the boy who fought with Ikahara Midori. He urges them to be fast, but Ikahara appears behind the man, asking if it was really that many, which shocks the man. Ikahara calmly tells him that if it's 15, then he should be the last one, pointing his fingers near the man's forehead. Ikahara then flips the man's head, making him slam hard on the building's roof. Ikihara, with his ravens, calls Rin. Rin, on the other side, replies that she has arrived and that there are no awakeners detected nearby. But it looks like someone arrived there before them, which surprises Ikihara. Rin then informs him that it was an S-rank hunter named Hatani Goru, the poison user, and that he came to visit Kannagi but was defeated miserably. While looking at Kannagi, who was collapsed on the rooftop with his mouth open, making Ikihara confused. A moment later, they arrive at his house, and Ikihara clappingly praises Kannagi for being amazing, telling him that he never expected he could actually do it, but he really defeated an S-rank hunter on top of it. Ikihara then asks him if he is okay, and if he got exposed to the poison, to which Kannagi replies yes, scratching his cheek and telling him that he and his mother are fine. Hinoki then asks what he meant by fine, reminding him that without Valentine there, he would have met the Buddha already, while looking at Valentine, who was complaining that she was tired. Hinoki tells Valentine that she is pretty good, finishing everything within only 5 seconds, and she replies that since the one producing the poison was there. Extracting some blood samples was quite simple, recalling how she continuously poked Heitani's body to find the antidote. Ikahara apologizes to Kanagi for being late and explains that he has taken measures against many organizations that are aiming for him because of today's video. This makes Kanagi ask Ikahara if it meant that Heitani was lying by saying that he was his comrade. To which Ikahara replies yes, adding that some people would use his name. Ikahara then asks Rin if she is done, and Rin appears at his side, replying yes. She then tells him that all the damages have been repaired, which surprises Kanagi when he sees that his house window and backyard wall are perfectly fixed. Ikahara then brightly tells him that they should go inside now and have a talk because it is about his future, making Kanagi stunned with nervousness. The next morning, he was outside with his suitcase when his mother asked him if he was really okay, if he had forgotten anything, if he had his wallet, and if he had brought his charger. He assured his mother that he was fine and told her not to worry too much, but she looked at him warily, wondering if he was really going to Ikihara's place. Last night, Ikihara had told his mother that he had undiscovered talents and begged her to entrust him to him, swearing that he would make him a great hunter. He excitedly shouted that it was awesome and told his mother that he had been chosen by Ikihara, but he was confused when he saw his mother silent. Back in the present, his mother gave him his lunch, knowing that he hadn't had breakfast, and told him that she had put it in a container and he could throw it away if he didn't like it. He once again assured his mother that he was fine and became silent when he remembered his mother asking Ikahara if it was true that in the future he would face many dangerous situations, to which Ikahara honestly replied, yes. His mother told Ikahara that he had always adored the legendary founders and had always struggled until now, so it was an honor for her if he were to take him. But as a parent, she was worried. Ikahara told his mother that he knew it was the job of a hunter to go against monsters and there was no such thing as certainty, but he swore to her that he would train him to be stronger, at least to the point where he wouldn't lose against the founders, making his mother feel assured and entrust him to Ikahara. In the car, Rin asked Ikahara if it was really okay to make such a promise and reminded him that in reality, they didn't even know what would happen in the near future. Ikahara looked at them at the mirror and saw his mother telling him not to sleep while being naked because he always caught a cold because of it. He asked his mother when that happened, but she just told him to be sure to separate his colored clothes when doing laundry, which he agreed to. Ikahara then replied to Rin that he would keep his promise as best as he could. After minutes of reminders, he said goodbye to his mother because it was time to go and told her to wish him luck. He then approached the car, telling his mother to take care. And when he was about to enter, his mother called him and told him to come home during the new year, making him teary-eyed without looking back. He then entered the car and apologized to them for the wait. They then drove away, leaving his mother waving him goodbye. Ikahara asked him if he was done, to which he replied yes and added that if he looked at his mother's face one more time, his resolve would crumble. Ikahara lay down while replying that he understood and told him that it would be a long trip, so he could do anything he wanted, such as eat or sleep. He saw the food his mother had packed for him and opened it, remembering her words. When he opened the lunchbox, he was surprised to see that in his pork cutlet, a good luck message was written, making him remember the comfort, care, and sacrifices his mother made for him. He thanked her for the food and ate it with tears in his eyes while Rin and Ikahara listened. They then continued their journey. A moment later, they arrived at their destination, and he was amazed to see it. Ikahara welcomed him and told him that only a handful of awakeners were allowed to be there in the anti-prophecy unit, also known as anti-prophecy, which was their headquarters. He was stunned in amazement. Meanwhile, inside one of the rooms, a man was watching from a window and told another that they had arrived. The new members were there. A lady with black hair asked if she was right that they were talking about the new member. The yellow-haired man replied that it was rare to have a new comrade. But the red-haired man asked if they really said comrade and suggested that they should see if he was truly qualified to be part of the anti-prophecy or not.